My name's Martin James, and my guests today are Will Rhind from Habito and Nigel Hakkak from Cobalt Financial. Now, we're going to look at dealing with disasters today. This is not to say that there'll be a problem with your mortgage, but knowing about some of the things that could go wrong can help you prepare for the worst. Now, we're going to try and answer as many of your questions as possible. But over to you, boys. Will, let's start with you. Tell me a little bit about yourself and Habito. How does that work? Habito, I keep saying it wrong.
Habito, nailed it. So yeah, firstly, thank you for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be here. My name's Will Rhind. I'm the VP of Advice and Growth at Habito. So I've been in financial services for about 17 years or so, and that's been across a variety of different roles, from management to being a broker myself. The last 6 years I've been at Habito. And the reason why I work for Habito is because our core mission is to make home ownership easier. And we invest in tech and streamlining the process to ultimately give a very seamless experience for the customer without jargon and demystify the whole process, which we're going to be discussing today.
And I have to say, I loved your advertisements when you launched. I know not everyone loved them, but I thought it was a really good way to actually reach out to younger people and actually make the whole process of mortgages seem a lot more accessible. So well done for that. If anyone's not seen them, have a look online. They are fantastic. Very, very bright. So obviously they appeal to me. Nigel, tell us a little bit about what you do. You are the boss, I believe.
I am indeed. Thank you very much for having me today as well. So I'm the director of Cobalt Financial and also an advisor. We're a smaller firm, and I've been in financial services about 25 years now. And my idea is to try and make home buying as easy as possible. So we will try and help and guide clients all the way through the home buying process with regards to their mortgages and any other advice they need on side, such as protection.
So we're going to be demystifying the whole process today as well. Now, obviously, you two have got very big brains, you're the experts and everything else. But I think a lot of people find, mortgages intimidating. Why do you think that is, Nigel?
I think it's the whole process of taking on such a big long-term commitment. And I don't think it's just the mortgage, although the mortgage does scare them. It's the whole idea of owning a property, and it's a step in the growing up world. So yeah,
it feels very grown up, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're suddenly an adult and you're taking care of yourself, and you've got all the bills and everything to cope with. And the actual mortgage, it's a very long-term loan, and sometimes it's the first and biggest loan that people take out. And I think it does scare them, and we try and make that as easy as possible.
Now, I know you'll probably hear lots of questions as well, and same for you, Will. What are the things that you hear most often, from friends or family or from clients of your company?
Sure. The first one and the main one is, how much can I borrow?
Right.
There's a bit of a misconception. Historically, it was based on a multiple of your income, and it was very, very straightforward to work out how much you can borrow. Mm-hmm. Now things are very different, and it's based on affordability. So it's not just your income, it's also looking at your outgoings, your expenditure, financial dependence, for example, i.e. children, the term of the mortgage and the repayment type as well. But that's the benefit of speaking to a broker. They'll have access to well over 90 lenders. They can fully assess your circumstances from a variety of different lenders and give you an exact amount how much you can borrow.
Nigel, you're very much at the front end in terms of kind of obviously being the boss, but also speaking direct to your customers. What are you hearing from them? What are the things that are kind of worrying them or that they want answers on?
The biggest concern at the moment is around interest rates and what's going to happen with you. And that has been questioned for some time. And the truth is, we don't know for certain where the market's going to go. I mean, over the last few years, we've seen a lot of things that have had impacts on interest rates. And so you can think they're going one direction and suddenly something changes. But realistically, the most important thing is to look at one's circumstances again. And if you need the security of a long-term fixed rate, then look at that rather than trying to hedge your bets on the cheapest rate out there.
Mm. And Will, I'm sorry to put you on the spot with all of this, but now at Habito, you are reimagining kind of the whole world of mortgages. If it's not too controversial, are there any parts of the whole process that you'd like to consign to history?
Yes, there's a few. I'm quite passionate about this. We live in a digital world, mm-hmm. And there is so much data that is available. And I find in the mortgage industry, there's quite a lot of duplication of data. And there are some lenders that you are still required to complete application on paper and then send it over digitally. And that seems madness
in 2025.
Yeah, exactly. You've got some banks that have set up and they are fully online and they wouldn't have paper in sight, really. Certifying documents is another example of that, where you've got to take original documents and certify to confirm you've seen an original document, but there is technology out there which can do a far better job than the human eye. And I just feel that if you take that one step further, looking at a property, there is information on that property available online. There is information about your payroll, your banking transactions. It's all digital now. So it baffles me why we have to fill in all this information and then take that information into a lender's portal. Yeah, the whole mortgage industry, and don't get me wrong, there's been lots and lots of progress over the last 10 or 15 years or so, but I feel the whole process needs to be digitised.
I know Empowered are pioneering the 24-hour turnaround for a faster lending decision at the moment that works because you can access these online services. I mean, Nigel, do you feel that what Will's saying, is this an impossible dream, or is it going to happen?
It should have really happened by now. The mortgage market really does need to go to the next level and start speeding things up, because, as Will said, there is so much technology available and so much information available that even to the extent of asking for pay slips when they've got access to all of that information already. With open banking, you've got access to all the bank statements. So lenders asking for these, it just causes delay.
Yeah. I think I find it fascinating because I've just been told to go down to the post office to certify my identification. But when I opened up a savings account, I did it with 10 minutes online, and I scanned my passport through a private app that kept everything secure. I was thinking, well, why do I have to go to the post office, which I really don't want to do? So actually, we have the technology. We're just waiting for some lenders to turn up and do it.
Yep.
So any lenders watching, I made them answer that question. So we are talking about disasters today, but I just really want to reassure everybody who's listening that the reason why we're doing this is to explain what can go wrong. But that doesn't mean things are going to go wrong necessarily. But let's start with you, Nigel. What are some of the things that can go wrong with a mortgage?
So the main things at the moment, obviously, with the cost of inflation and everything, and with interest rates the way they've gone, is a lot of people are very worried when it comes to the end of their fixed rate, the mortgage jumping up and their monthly costs being a lot more than they were expecting or can afford. And that in itself is quite worrying. And there are a number of things that lenders can do to try and overcome this and help. But the most important thing is to speak to people and get advice from the right people, and then manage their expectations in advance.
So you don't wait until 2 weeks before your mortgage deal ends before you seek help. You can actually ask 6 months in advance?
You can ask 6 months in advance.
Okay.
And there are various things that lenders will offer, because there's a mortgage charter now, and where lenders will look at people's circumstances. Now, this is obviously not advice. Everyone needs their individual advice, but they can look at extending the term of their mortgage. That would reduce the monthly costs, or potentially taking a period where they've got it on interest only, or potentially converting the entire mortgage to interest only. So there are a lot of options on that side to look at, and it's about trying to find the right course, path of action for that particular person.
Now, of course, we have quite a lot of people who are watching this show who already have mortgages, and as you were saying, they see that date heading towards them. Well, when it comes to remortgaging, is it a whole new application? Do I have to go through all of this again, or is the process a bit quicker once you've already got a mortgage?
Well, I'll explain the process and the options you've got. So you've got a remortgage, and that is taking your mortgage to a new lender, and that is effectively starting the process again.
Yeah.
So you will have to provide proof of earnings, and there will be affordability assessment, there'll be a credit check, and there'll be legal work involved as well to move you from one lender to another. Or you've got what's called a product transfer, which is essentially just changing your product with your existing lender. So there's no affordability checks, no credit scoring, no legal work, but that lender might not necessarily give you the best deal that's available. So it's best, again, I know we've spoken a lot about a broker, but speak to a broker and they'll be able to provide you with both options. You can compare them and you can decide which one is best for you.
So if, say, you've got a new job that's paying you slightly less money than before, it's not the end of the world. You could potentially still get a remortgage with your existing broker.
Exactly, yeah.
Sorry, you could get a bit with your lender. See, this is why I need you guys to explain this to me.
But speak to a broker, because they will arrange that on behalf of the lender. So it's having both options there. One with your existing lender, one with the best deal that's out there. And it might be your existing lender, but a broker will be able to confirm that.
So, Will, I think one of the things that people really want to know if they're considering getting onto the property ladder is what can you actually do to ensure that things go smoothly? Is there anything that I can do in advance just to make the process go quickly?
Definitely. I would say probably the first thing to do is start with checking your credit history. A broker will ask you if you've got any blips on your credit history or anything more severe like CCJs, that's a county court judgment, or IBAs. So it's worth just checking your credit history, finding out what's on there, even providing that to your broker, and that gives them a good idea of what lender they can place you with. Second part, speak to a broker, get an idea of how much you can borrow first and foremost. But it's not just the mortgage you need to think about, even though that's very important, but start considering what solicitors you might want to use. As soon as you have an offer accepted, the estate agent is going to ask you who your solicitors are. So if there are delays because you haven't found one yet, that inevitably is going to make the process take a little bit longer. But also consider what type of survey you might want for the property. If you're buying an older property, it might be advisable to get a more in-depth survey. So there's a few things to think about, but again, a broker will be able to guide you through exactly what steps you need to take and where.
Right. So one of the first things that we need to do then to kind of avoid a whole disaster with the mortgage is just to get prepped and know a little bit more about the people who are involved in the process. Nigel, what do these people do? What do I need to be asking for? Because I haven't got a clue how to find a solicitor who specialises in these things.
So most brokers will actually be able to recommend a solicitor to you as well as the estate agent that you're buying through. They'll have a list of solicitors that they can often recommend. But it's most important to have that available at an early stage because it does save on delays afterwards.
So what is it, what in terms of kind of having a solicitor in place or somebody who does a survey, how do I find someone who works for me?
Okay, so with regards to the survey, most surveyors are regulated and they should be completely impartial. Obviously, some may be more scrupulous, more look at things in more detail than others and may be more negative in their reporting, but ultimately they should all see the same thing and be able to report back to you on the quality of the property and whether there's anything you need to worry about. Now, what's happened with lenders recently is a lot of banks are now doing what's called desktop valuation, where they're not actually going out and looking at the property. So the old days of having the valuer going out and telling you if there's anything wrong with the property doesn't tend to happen as much anymore. So it's very important that you do actually recruit someone to do it an impartial survey for you to make sure there's no surprises on that side.
Okay.
And then with regards to the solicitor, there are conveyancing solicitors that specialise in this field will help with regards to the buying process. And generally speaking, as long as they're on panel for the lender, that's the main thing, because a lot of the smaller firms may not be on certain lender panels. That doesn't mean you don't use a smaller firm. It just means that you've just got to make sure that everything fits into place. And again, the broker should be able to look at all of that for you, because when they're doing the mortgage application, they should check with the lender to make sure that that solicitor is available.
Fantastic. So I think a lot of these things can seem a little bit overwhelming at first, can't they? When but if you speak to a good broker, they could at least demystify the process and help you find the right person. We're just talking about surveys there as well, and I think this is one of those other areas that people kind of have an idea of what it is, but there are different types of surveys as well, aren't there, Will?
Yeah, there certainly are. I mean, you've got a valuation, that's the first thing. And you have different types of valuation. We just said there that the desktop valuation, or something called an AVM, which is an automated valuation as well, or someone will actually drive to the property and have a quick look at the property. But it's probably only 10 or 15 minutes or so. You can then get what's now called a level 2 survey. Old money, it was called a home buyer's report, where you go into far more depth of the property and you'll get a comprehensive report and things to watch out for. You've also got a level 3, which is in old money, a full structural survey, which is very in-depth, more expensive, of course, but can give you a really good idea of what, the state of the quality of the property and things you need to dig into in a bit more detail.
Right. Well, we are talking about home buying disasters today, and obviously, as you're saying this about surveys, I'm thinking about all the things that can go wrong when buying a property, just to keep everyone nice and cheery. So Nigel, what should I look for when buying a house? Are there any kind of like danger signs I should keep an eye out for?
So realistically, the survey should tell you about the condition of the property. And it's amazing how many people don't actually carry out a survey on a property, and they're spending all this money on a house or a flat, and they don't really know if there's anything structurally wrong with it. And what seems like a small investment is money very, very well spent. because that should hopefully tell them about the physical problems with regards to the property. Obviously, knowing who your neighbours are and knowing whether there's any history there is a lot more tricky. And I remember when I bought my first flat, it was a probate, and I turned around to the woman downstairs and I said, did the person die in the flat? Did I really want to know the answer to that question? and she said, don't ask questions like that, you won't like the answer. But I was young and naive at the time. So
Did you get cash off? More to the point. I think that's the best thing.
I bought at a really good time of the market. It's just trying to do as much research as you can possibly do. And there is a lot of information that is available online. And I think it's very important that you do that research to try and find out if there's anything to worry about. But you've also got to take a lot of things with a pinch of salt and decide whether it is of importance. You hear about the neighbours from hell as well.
Yeah.
But
this is what scares me about property buying. I've lived in cities all my life. I've had good neighbours and bad neighbours, and I worry so much about getting either a noisy neighbour or worse, one who complains every time you move in your flat or something like that. There's nothing I can do about that, is there?
Unfortunately, there's a personality clash with that side sometimes. So It could be they're the most amazing neighbour for the previous person, and then you come along and they don't like your shirt.
Yeah.
They don't like something about you.
I'm saying, Nigel. Well, it's such a loaded question. Obviously, you've worked in the industry for a long period of time, so I'll ask you the same thing.
Yep.
What are the things that you would be looking for, maybe danger signs or things to look for in property?
Well, I mean, there's the obvious ones in terms of, there's damp patches, there's any cracks on the wall. That could suggest a wider problem. But I think if we look online, to Nigel's point, there is police.uk. You can check out crime stats. Rightmove have got lots of area insights as well. There's an abundance of information you can find there. Facebook communities and different groups. You get a real feel for an area by looking online. And when I bought it was a flat actually, not far from you actually. I went and knocked on the door just to see what the neighbours were like.
So it's worthwhile also kind of looking at what's around you, though, isn't it? Because it's not just about getting the property; you've also got to insure it. And I think sometimes is it an urban myth that living by a river or by water can actually cause you problems further down the line? Do I need to be checking if I'm on a floodplain?
You do need to check if you're on a floodplain. But that, again, is something your solicitor will do. One of the searches will show what the risk of any flooding is. And obviously, it does depend on how high the land is as well. But you'll also find when you try to insure the building that if it is a high-risk flood area, that insurance companies will either decline to cover, which is unlikely in a lot of cases, but they'll potentially put premiums up. So these are all things to consider.
And in this cheery world of environmental catastrophe, it's something that we possibly need to think, maybe not a flat, just on the Thames floodplain at the moment. Okay, so let's look at gazumping. Now, it's this we often hear about gazumping. Nigel, what is it? Can I avoid it? Is it legal?
So, unfortunately, you can't avoid it because ultimately, if someone wants to put an offer on a property, they can do so. And the estate agent is obliged to put that offer forward, and so you can be all the way down the legal process and have your mortgage offer in place but not exchanged yet, and someone can put a higher offer forward, and then it's up to the vendors to decide whether they want to proceed with yourself or take the higher offer. And so it is something that is still around, and depending on the market will depend on how common it is. But one of the things that I find doesn't help is the actual house buying process is quite a slow process. So the legal side, unfortunately, it does take quite a while to get from when you put your offer on to exchange of contracts. And if that was sped up at all, then there is potential to try and alleviate some of these problems. So that is definitely an area that needs to be looked at. But unfortunately, the way it is at the moment, until you've exchanged contracts, any costs you've incurred in the buying, you can potentially lose all of that money and not buy the property.
So these are like fees, admin fees, survey, things along those lines.
Anything like your legal fees, your searches.
Well, can I get insurance for that? Is there anything I can do about those fees?
Not really. You can find solicitors that will give you certain things that are included. If, for example, you have any problems, they might cover the cost of your second set of searches. So it's certainly something to consider.
In terms of kind of the big changeover, because this is the other thing as well, isn't it? When the mortgage completes, Nigel, do I have to move on that day? What if I'm not ready? I've not packed anything.
So often, if you're a first-time buyer, you're moving from rented, you can move over a period of time. But obviously, if you're selling your house to buy the property, then you complete on the sale on the same day as you complete on the purchase quite often. And that can be quite chaotic because you're literally moving out of one house and moving into the other all on the same day. And there's a lot that can go wrong to delay things.
Yeah.
And I've seen it many a times where people are literally moving out of the property at 5 o'clock and moving into the other one at the same time. And so you're suddenly moving into a property with your bed not unpacked and so on. So just be prepared for that side. But generally speaking, for a first-time buyer, let's say, that is buying their property, if they want to continue living with parents or stay rented for a short period of time whilst they're doing the place up and gradually move in, then there's no reason why they can't do that.
Okay. Now, we've been talking about everything that could go horribly wrong, and I don't want people watching this to be panicking. So, Will, in all honesty, how common are real mortgage disasters?
There's more that don't end in disaster.
Yeah.
There's lots of transactions that go through very, very smoothly, and it all comes back to being prepared. Make sure you check your credit history, make sure your documents are in date, make sure you speak to a broker, get an idea of how much you can borrow. And I know we keep touching on that, but having an idea of how much you can borrow and the monthly costs, firstly, gives you an indication as a purchaser, but also when you get an offer accepted, the estate agent is going to ask for confirmation that you can borrow the amount you're looking to borrow. Like I touched on earlier, they will be asking who your solicitors are as well. So the more you can do before you get to that point where you get an offer accepted, the better.
And you've got guides to this on the Habito website.
We do indeed, yeah. Plenty of guides, and we can put you through to a mortgage expert. We'll happily elaborate on any of those.
And again, with all of your experience in this field, Nigel, how often are you really dealing with disasters?
It's not that often, and ultimately, as long as you communicate and you speak in advance, then you can work a way through it, and that's the most important thing. So we're always trying to avoid the disaster and just have it as a little bit of a bump in the road, so to put it. But again, there are lots of options, and lenders are quite accommodating. They will listen to people's circumstances. So again, you can speak to a mortgage advisor again, and we are here to advise as well. We're not just, so at the end of the day, if someone's got a mortgage but they need help, then speak to a mortgage advisor. They should be able to help you and guide you through the process of what you can do if you need help.
And this isn't just a one-shot deal, is it, with both of you? If I'm using your services, I'm in effect potentially entering into a long-term relationship. So I can come back to you whenever the mortgage comes up for renewal.
Absolutely.
Well, Will and Nigel, I feel very reassured. I'm going through this process at the moment, and I have to admit I was quite nervous at the start of this conversation, but that's so helpful, and I really hope that everybody watching is feeling the same. You've been watching On the House. This is another of our free guides answering all of your questions about mortgages. Get in touch and watch this space for more.